What's up, everybody? Welcome to Touchdown Texas, episode 28. I'm your host, Shiva Patel, and my co host here, Nick Rodriguez. We have a lot to talk about on this episode. Women's team making it to the Final Four. Men's team, we hired a basketball coach. But how you doing, Nick?
I feel great, man. I mean, it hasn't been that long since we recorded, but a lot has happened with men's basketball, women's basketball, and football. So I'm happy to get into it.
For sure. And before we get started, be sure to follow us at our social media channels at touchdown_Texas. For those of you that are new to our show, welcome. This is the place to be. We cover all things, all Texas Longhorns athletics, specifically in football, every single angle of the football team. Go back and watch our episodes during the season. But now we are in our second week of spring practice. The team practiced yesterday. They're going to practice again tomorrow. But before we talk about that, let's talk about the biggest thing. The women's basketball team, first Final Four since 2003. Vic Schaefer's squad. What a game last night, beating TCU. How big of a deal is this, making it to the Final Four?
It's huge. It's a massive deal. Like you said, Vic Schaefer, he's been an awesome coach since he's been at the University of Texas, even before that. But this is a big deal. I mean, we've been knocking on the door the last several years in the Elite Eight. Haven't been to the Final Four since 2003. Had a massive battle, like you said, against TCU, and we ended up pulling away a little bit towards the end and stealing this one and heading to the Final Four. It's a loaded group. We get another matchup with South Carolina. UCLA is also in there, and as well as Connecticut. So it's going to be a fierce battle. I'm so proud of our girls for making it this far. We were so close last year, losing to NC State in the Elite Eight, and we finally cracked through. It's been over 20 years since we've been in the Final Four. Hopefully, we can make some more damage.
For sure. They're such an inspiration. They play so hard. There's such a fun brand of basketball to watch. Rory Harmon's a stud.
Yeah.
Madison Booker's a star.
Yep.
Her and Juju Watkins, in my opinion, are 1A and 1B for women's college basketball. Like, they're very close together.
Yeah.
And it was a tight game, and we knew we were going to pull away because in my opinion, we had more scoring than TCU. So eventually we knew that TCU, they were going to run out of the well a little bit, the water in the well with scoring. And we kind of weared them down with our defense. They committed 21 turnovers, TCU, but that's a product of our defense.
Yeah, exactly.
We had 14 assists to TCU's 8. And what about points in the paint? 24 points to 8 points for TCU. We talked about it. This is a team that's a little bit old school that goes against the analytics. They do not shoot a lot of threes and they do not make a lot of threes. But look where it's got them. They're in the Final Four. So that's just a testament to Vic Schaefer, the work that he's put in with his team, and the buy-in of the culture of Texas women's basketball. And you could see people love watching this team. The Moody Center was packed. Pretty much all the Texas women's games at Moody Center was packed. This is going to be really exciting. And let's talk about this, the preview for Texas and South Carolina. I believe the game is Friday night, either Friday or Saturday night. What are you looking for in this game? We rubber matched South Carolina. We won one, they won one. What are the keys to beating South Carolina?
I mean, you got to get up to a fast start because they'll put you away real fast. They beat us the first time during the regular season. Then we got our get back and we beat them again. We beat them, and then we met again in the SEC championship game, and they took care of us pretty easily. So you definitely have to be able to be on your game. I mean, their coaching staff has won a lot of games as individuals in college. And then they've just crushed it at South Carolina. So they're really hard to beat. A lot of respect for South Carolina. I'm glad we're going up against them again. It's going to be a lot of fun. We've beaten them this year already, so we should feel comfortable. But you got to get out to a fast start. The longer we're in the game, the more we can compete. And I don't want to make it seem like we can't hang. We can. We're a 1 seed. They've just done it more than we have, just to be quite honest. They've won championships. They've been to Final Fours. They're always in the conversation. We are too. They've just gone a little bit further than us, especially in their most recent years. And it's going to be a hell of a battle, hell of a game. Our stars got to play great defense like any other basketball game, but we cannot let them get on top of us like they did in the SEC championship game. They pretty much blew us out. We ended up losing by about 20 points or so. Got to make it our game. Got to slow it down. Got to create turnovers. Got to create havoc. But they're so smart and well coached over there that they're not going to be tricked by anything. None of these teams in the Final Four. I mean, you got UConn, UCLA, us and Carolina. It's going to be a great champion, and a great two great semifinal matchups as well. So exciting stuff.
It really is. This is the first year in a while, and I think Nick agrees with me on this, where both the men's Final Four and the women's Final Four are incredible matchups.
Oh yeah,
We got four
yeah,
great teams.
yeah, definitely.
And I cannot wait for this matchup. The stars are going to have to show out. In my opinion, we're going to have to space the floor a little bit and make a little bit more threes than we had to in the past. Because South Carolina, the last time, they were sagging off our guards a little bit and daring us to shoot threes. Our guards like to operate in the mid-range and attack downhill and get to the basket. Well, if South Carolina is daring you to shoot threes, you have to shoot them to make them respect it. Because then if you try to go into, they'll collapse the paint, because in college there's no 3-second rule. So the centers are just allowed to stay in the paint. And that's when it causes turnovers, because you're not going to get those foul calls earlier in the year that you got against South Carolina in this Final Four matchup. So we're going to have to keep, place physical on defense, and then on offense we're going to have to execute and make shots. And I believe if we do, we have a great chance.
Yeah, definitely.
As well as we have to rebound. We cannot allow South Carolina to get on the offensive boards, because then that gives them second chance opportunities. And Nick Welly put that they have such a potent offensive system, South Carolina does. So that's going to be the key. It should be a great matchup. I'm going the Horns 84-83. What is your score prediction?
Yeah, I got the Horns as well. I mean, I think maybe overtime. I mean, it's going to come down to the wire. I think that's going to be an awesome game. I do have us winning it all. So taking out Carolina would be one of the bigger obstacles. But again, UCLA is stacked too. They got that girl who's 6'7". I mean, she's a beast. She was killing against LSU. So all these teams left, men's and women's, when you get down to the Elite Eight, they're all fantastic. You're going to have to play at your best. That game before TCU, when we played Tennessee, I mean,
that was insane.
That was a tough one. That was a nail biter, and we got away with that one too. So any of these games are going to be awesome. I mean, I got Texas UConn in the finals. I got us edging out Carolina and UConn, both dynamic games. But whatever finals we end up getting, if Texas can't pull it out, still going to be watching. It's going to be fantastic. And this is great for women's basketball. The last 2 years, they've delivered. And Paige Beckers has been on a freaking heater for UConn. She dropped 40 against OU. She dropped 30 the other night against USC. So Paige is looking for that title. She's been hurt a little bit. And they got bounced. So she's looking for another one.
UConn has a chip on their shoulder, because they've been out.
Yeah, that's scary too.
It is. They've been out of the title conversation in the last 3-4 years. So they're
out, out, but still really good. Not as good as Carolina. They've been the team of the talk for sure.
Exactly. So now they're motivated. Let's see. So I think Texas and UConn and Texas Longhorns are going to win the women's national championship. I have it on my bracket. Ooh. So let's see what's going to happen. So now let's talk about the men's Final Four. This is also a really interesting Final Four. Auburn, Duke, Florida, and Houston, all 4 number 1 seeds making it to San Antonio, the Alamo City. The first time this has happened since 2008, and the Final Four was in San Antonio in 2008. That was another star-studded Final Four. What are you looking for in this Final Four? And tell me who's going to advance to the national championship game.
Well, I mean, like you said, this is the first time in a long time that all 4 1 seeds have made it this far, right? You got Auburn, Florida, Duke, Houston, 2 of them from the SEC. Man, it's going to be some really good basketball. I think the first thing I'm thinking of, whose stars stay out of foul trouble, right? Who can avoid the injury bug? And people are sleeping on Houston way too much to me. They don't talk about Houston that much, right? They talk about Florida. They talk about Auburn, because Auburn was the number 1 overall seed, and they got the older roster and everything like that. And of course, they talk about Duke because of Cooper Flag and the history and everything like that. So again, same thing with the women's. We're going to have a fantastic semifinal games. I believe it's on Saturday, and a fantastic championship game. I'm going to swerve a little bit here. This is kind of based on my bracket. Um, it's going to be some awesome back and forth. I really do think they're going to be all-time classic games that we'll talk about for years to come. But give me the Gators. They'll be going up against Auburn. I'm going to take the Florida Gators. I think they're just so fast and physical. There's really not one guy that does it for them. Their main guy would be Walter Clayton Jr., who's a stud, transfer, so many transfers. And then I'm going to go, I guess it's kind of an upset because it's a 1 seed, but I'm going to take the Houston Cougars to upset Duke here.
Interesting.
It's an upset, but they're all 1 seed, so I don't know how much of an upset it really is. It's going to be an awesome game, no matter what we get. And then, they'll play in San Antonio for the championship. Houston will have that advantage, but I'm still going to go with the Gators. Cutting down the nets. It's going to be awesome either way. I'm so excited. None of the coaches have won a championship, so we're bound to get a first-year championship from one of these guys. So it's going to be awesome either way.
It's going to be really, really fun to watch both of these games. So Florida is a 2.5-point favorite against Auburn, and then Duke is a 5.5 favorite against Houston. So it's going to, let's see, whether Houston is the team that, yes, people are sleeping on, but I love the way that they play. Their offensive scheme has really adapted the last couple of years. Before, they used to just be about defense and physical play. So let me just I'll talk about the preview the Duke-Houston game first. Houston's offense is really good, but can they keep up with this Duke potent offense? Because Duke is going to force Houston to make shots. And let's see if Houston can make enough shots and defend Duke and be physical enough for them to be able to take Duke out of their game. Can they shut down Cooper Flagg? But the thing about shutting down Cooper Flagg is Duke has so many other stars, Con Knipple, Sion James, Tyrese Proctor that you could go to. So who's, LJ Cryer is Houston's best player. Cooper Flagg is Duke's best player. Them two, in my opinion, are going to cancel each other out. It's who's going to be the second or third guys that step up and make shots and make plays that's going to determine who's going to win this game and who's going to get timely stops. I lean slightly towards Duke, but it's going to be a very close game. And then with the Auburn-Florida matchup, will Jedi Broome play against Florida? And if he does play, will it be 100%? Jedi Broome is where everything starts with Auburn. He's a fantastic player, putting together a stellar season. He can both score from the inside on the mid-range, also step out on three. He can block shots. He gets rebounds. But Auburn has a versatile enough team where they can still shoot and generate enough offense without Jedi Broome. They had that Pettiford kid, that freshman, Denver Jones, Kelly, who's a sniper who came from Georgia Tech. So let's see. And then they have the big physical guys that can get rebounds like Cardwell, and Chaney Johnson. Florida, on the other hand, is just a fast and paced, up and down team. They like to shoot a lot of threes. Walter Clayton Jr. is an NBA player. He's so fun to watch. He used to play for Rick Pitino at Iona, and now he's dominating at Florida. I like Florida's guards because they're very big and physical, Martin and Richard. And they also have two really good bigs in Alex Condon, the Aussie, and Thomas Haw. And Florida got a little lucky because they were down against Texas Tech, and they had some things go their way. Texas Tech missed some free throws. They didn't get the ball to their best players. They looked a little sloppy on offense. And Walter Clayton made a bunch of huge threes as well as Hawk. So I'm going to go with my bracket. Most of my brackets had Duke and Florida for the championship. I want to have Duke and Florida playing, and Duke is going to win the national championship, but it's going to be very close.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I could see any of that happening. I really could see any of those four teams advancing. I could see it could be Auburn and Duke. I can really see any of those teams winning at all. I mean, it's really going to be awesome with the matchups and everything. If it ends up being an Auburn and Duke, or if it ends up being Houston and Auburn, or Florida and Duke. I mean, there's a lot of great combinations. They're all big schools. Houston it's awesome for Houston. I mean, as we talked about, they've had up and downs in their football history, like recently, but they've had a lot of great guys. I mean, Matthew Golden You came from Houston. There's been a lot of great guys that came from Houston. They have a lot of talent there, especially basketball.
Right.
And you got Bruce Pearl, who coached a lot at Tennessee. Now
I
he's
love
over
Bruce
at
Pearl.
Auburn.
Great coach.
And so it's going to be great. It's going to be great either way. It's going to be a great semifinals for both the men's and women's, and we'll crown a champion soon enough.
The head coaches are awesome. Bruce Pearl, who's a great coach who wins everywhere he goes. Kelvin Sampson, he used to do more with less, but now he's recruiting some studs at Houston. Miles Uzan, the transfer from Oklahoma, what a stud he is. And if you see Houston's recruiting class next year or late, it's number 2 in the country behind Duke. So Kelvin Sampson is reloading. He really wants a national championship. So let's see what's going to happen. They should go right down to the wire, and we'll react to them after the games happen. So now let's talk about the Texas men's basketball team. So we had a hire. It's happened since the last time we were on the pod. Sean Miller, the former Arizona and Xavier coach, he's had a very successful stint. 8 Sweet 16s, 4 Elite Eights. He hasn't been able to get over the hump, but he's been knocking on the door. What are your thoughts about this hire, Nick?
I love this hire. I think it's great. I think it's a great hire. It's funny timing. Obviously we just played Xavier in that first round. And they ended up beating us, and then ended up hiring him a few days later. I think that's Sunday, like just a few days later after we fired Rodney Terry. But no, I think it's a great move. He had a lot of really, really good, talented teams at Arizona that kind of fell short early on. And then he, was at Xavier, and he's always had talented teams. He's always had high recruiting. I just think ultimately, if we're going to win, we need to actually focus on basketball too. The priority is always football, but if you have some more resources in the basketball, be it recruiting, be it whatever it is, coaching, facilities, which I know our facilities are top notch. We just redid our basketball center, but I think it's a great hire. Give him time to see what he can actually build. We had to take a step back after Chris Beard and all the allegations, and that's why we had Rodney Terry, who did great. I mean, he had a lot of success. It just couldn't be maintained, wasn't consistent enough. But he had a lot more success than a lot of Texas coaches. So I think Sean Miller is going to be great. He's going to bring in recruits. He's going to be a great hire, and so I think he's going to do a great job on the 40 acres.
He really is, and he is a coach that we hired because we wanted an exciting brand of basketball. This is no disrespect to Rodney Terry, but he's more of a defensive coach. Sean Miller is an offensive coach that likes to run up and down the floor, shoot a lot of threes. The Moody Center is gonna be a place to be because this brand of basketball is gonna be very exciting to watch. And he's had success everywhere he's been. His first stint at Xavier, Arizona, his second stint at Xavier. He wins wherever he goes. Yeah. He recruits really well, both freshmen and the portal. We actually got a player before we recorded, 30 minutes before we recorded. We got a sophomore, Dylan Swain from Xavier. So he committed to the Texas Longhorns. But he's a great player. And let's see it, because there's one more Xavier player that I want to get, the Cronwell kid. That's a great shooter that transferred from Indiana State to Xavier. Hopefully he jumps in the boat. But also Sean Miller is working on his freshman recruiting class that he signed at Xavier, and then our freshman that we signed. And then let's see how many players that he retains from the staff. It looks like he's going to retain Shadal Weaver because he praised Weaver endlessly. So let's see. I think give Sean Miller some time, but you could tell that he's motivated. He wants to get over the hump. I consider this like the Sark hire. People were like, well, Sark has not been able to get over the hump. They called him 8-win Sark. He's never won 10 games before, never been able to get to the college football playoff. Well, Sean Miller's a little bit of the same way by never making it to a Final Four. But now that he has the resources with Texas, let's see if he's able to get over the hump and put together a successful team. And I think Sean Miller is going to do that. To Nick's point about the talent buy-in, so apparently now the donors are very motivated to fund basketball now. So they're going to have a large pool with coaches and assistant coaches and willing to spend in the portal, which is very interesting and much needed in college basketball. Another thing to watch is Sean Miller loves recruiting international players from different parts of the world, mainly Eastern Europe and Europe. That's basically, he had a lot of his players from Arizona. And let's see now if he does that at Texas, because we've never been a place where international players have come and played. Well, that's kind of the landscape now with college basketball. So let's see how many players he's able to get and what kind of roster he puts together.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly right. I mean, the women's basketball team under Vic Schaefer has been so good over the last 5 to 7 years. I mean, Elite Eight, Sweet 16 appearances, beating our rivals, and now making a Final Four. You're going to get that push from the men's, right? And I think you made a good point, saying he hasn't made a Final Four yet, kind of taking a chance on Sark. Obviously his career was revitalized by Saban in Alabama. A lot of the Final Four though is luck. Like, that's definitely a part of it. Obviously you need good coaching and you need a good team, and part of that would be all Miller and his staff to build, of course. But some of it is injuries, some of it is bad calls, some of it is just the draw of who you get to play. Like, going back to Florida and UConn, on the men's side, they had to play each other in the second round, and UConn almost beat them. So that's kind of a tough draw for a one seed to have to play a two back-to-back champion in the second round. So, there's a percentage of it that's luck. You have to get lucky with players. A big portion of it is you though, and we'll see if you can make it happen. I think most Texas fans would be happy with Sweet 16s and Elite Eights and the occasional Final Four. And of course the championship. But just seeing what the women's side has done under Vic Schaefer over the last 10 years or 7 years, it's been awesome, and you just want that for the men's side as well.
It did it. I think it put a little heat on the men's basketball because they were one of the worst sports on the 40 acres. They were, so
and they still made the tournament. So it just goes to show where we're at.
Exactly. So CDC's like, we need to make a move. Let's get the guy that we wanted. The other choice was Tommy Lloyd, who was a current coach at Arizona. They said CDC locked in on those two targets, but I'm happy with Sean Miller. He's a proven guy. He said hopefully this is his last stop. He's in his mid-50s. So let's see if Texas is his last stop and he can build something at Texas. But before we move on to our next topic, I want to ask you, let's close the book on the Trey Johnson year at Texas. What did you like about this year, and what do you project him going into the NBA draft?
Well, I think he grew as a scorer. I mean, throughout the entire season, he became a playmaker. I mean, there was times where we had guys down, injured, guys not playing consistently well. You mentioned Terry. His style is more defensive oriented, right? So which doesn't cater to Trey Johnson as much. It was a big load for Trey to carry in his first year in the SEC as a freshman, where his body's still growing. But ultimately, I just thought he got better throughout the year. At the beginning of the year, I thought he was forcing shots, and part of it is because he had to. But he got bigger, he got stronger, he got faster, and he got smarter. He could pass the ball really well. It's just guys, his assist numbers I think are just going to skyrocket at the NBA. Just because honestly, he would pass the guys and they would miss, or he learned also I think to trust his teammates as well, because I think sometimes you pass. They missed 3 shots in a row. You're like, well, I guess I'll take it when I'm double teamed. And sometimes that was the reality of the team. Ultimately, he was one of the best freshmen we've ever had. Obviously, he's going to go to the NBA. I think 5 to 7 would be like his 5 to 10 is his range. I mean, he's a scorer. He can light up anybody. He can get better on the defensive end. He's got great size. He's quick. He's fast. He's smart. And he can pass. I think that's an underrated part of his game. He can pass the ball. Just our guys couldn't hit shots all the time, unfortunately. And unfortunately, he didn't play his best towards the end of the season. I think he was just tired, carrying the load, which is a lot for a freshman. I mean, we talked about Cooper Flagg, who is unbelievable as a freshman, but man, he's got so much help on that Duke team.
Yes.
John Shire at Duke is such a good coach at Duke that you would think if you put take Flagg out and put Trey on that Duke team. I mean, not saying they'd be better, but they'd be pretty damn smooth. And also probably a one seed, one or 2 seed. So fantastic season, one of our best ever. He's going to have a great NBA career as well.
I love that you emphasize his passing skills, because that's something that NBA scouts were trying to ding him on, but he made a lot of good passes throughout games. You just have to watch them. Yes, his teammates missed a lot of shots. He would penetrate and collapse the defense. And Gray did do a good job of kicking it out to his teammates. He trusted his teammates more as the SEC slate went on, and his defense got a lot better. But I think the biggest thing he's going to learn is how to handle double teams, because we saw during SEC play, what was the other team's scouting report only? Trey Johnson. So this is going to be a good learning experience for him, how to handle double teams, how to use the retreat dribble to get out of situations where either someone's hard hedging you on the pick and roll or the second defender is coming at you, and how to either split the double team or find the open teammate. So he learned a lot. I love watching Trey Johnson, some of the tough shots that he hit. He was automatic. He could shoot from all three levels. He could attack the basket, shoot the mid-range, make threes. He was a fun player. You could tell he loved playing for the burnt orange and white, which is very important. He's going to be ambassador for Texas coming back, and we're going to miss you, Trey Johnson. But right now, I've seen mock drafts where a lot of mock drafts have him either 6 or 7, and some people have him slated to going towards the Sixers. So what would you think about that fit?
Well, they're certainly in an interesting spot. The Sixers. I mean, they're going to miss the playoffs for the first time since the 2016-2017 season. It's a bit of a drought for the Philadelphia 76ers. There's a lot of questions about Joel Embiid. Paul George was beat up this whole year. I think if I was the GM of the Sixers, I would start to build around Maxey. I think they have a couple other pieces. The kid from Duke who got hurt as well. So they just had a lot of injuries and stuff like that. So I would try to get rid of Embiid. I try to get rid of PG and get what you can back from that, maybe a couple of young pieces, and then put them there. Get some scoring. You need some defense if you're going to trade away those two guys. But Embiid and PG are just not healthy enough right now, and it's probably too late to get the package you want from Embiid and PG. But I think you got to get rid of them, cut your ties, cut your losses now, and just try to go young. Be bad for a couple of years maybe, and Tyrese Maxey and Trey Johnson, there's certainly worse backcourts out there. So I think that'd be pretty damn good, and maybe try to find a big through a trade or something like that. But that's what I would do. I would just try to cut ties and restart if I was Philly.
I would want him to go to a good team like Philly, because at first, I told you this off camera, Nick. I wanted him to go to a team where he could shoot like 25 to 30 times a game. Well, sometimes those type of players, your value goes down within the league, because then, especially if they're not winning, they're going to label him as a player that's not a winner, which is unfair to the guy. So I would rather him go to a team like Maxey, a backcourt where he can shoot, he's producing, but he can also have another player. And he's going to be the rookie of the year conversation, because you never know what's going to happen. But let's see where Trey Johnson goes. He's not yet declared yet. I just want to say that, but the expectation that is he is going to go to the NBA draft. Well, our last topic of the day, let's transition to football. So unfortunately, we've had some injuries, specifically at the wide receiver position. That's been kind of the headline of camp. We already knew going into camp, DeAndre Moore had a toe injury and he was going to be sidelined for the rest of camp. But we found out this weekend that Ryan Wingo had a minor hamstring injury. It's very precautionary. They're not worried about that, but they're going to hold him out the rest of the spring practice. What are your thoughts about this injury, Nick? And does this give the young guys an opportunity to grow and learn the position faster?
I think that's the only thing. It gives the young guys more opportunities. I mean, Sark said he's not worried. It's minor. Wingo played a full season with us last year. His body still might be recovering for all we know. So, no, I'm not concerned. I think it's more reps for the young guys who either are freshmen or sophomores, and they, didn't get a lot of touches because there was, Matthew Golden and Isaiah Bond there last year, and now they can have that opportunity, especially with Wingo being hurt. So, no, I don't think it's a big deal. He'll be ready to go. And like you said, it's more reps for the young guys.
So speaking of one of the young guys, Parker Livingstone, redshirt freshman from Lovejoy, Texas, has really been showing out. He's 6'4". He's big. He can run. They said he can run a 4.4. He's very fast.
Wow.
Do you think he will be in Sark's circle of trust, and will he be a major impact player this fall?
If the answer to the first question is yes, then the answer to the second question has to be yes. I do think the answer is yes to both. And again, I don't know if it's going to happen in September. Probably not. But I would book it that it would probably have to happen before the OU game, which is in October. So, yes, I think so. And part of that is because we are young at wide receiver. We have DeAndre Moore and Ron Wingo who are kind of the leaders, but they're only sophomores, right? They're not super seasoned, like a Matthew Golden or an Isaiah Bond were last season. So yes, I do think, based on those credentials where, man, you're 6'4" and you're running a 4.4, damn, right? It's great size, it's great catching ability. Can he just can he get into that circle of trust? We saw DeAndre Moore play his way into more and more and more snaps as the season went on. I think this will be a situation where he tests you out. If you fail, okay, but if you mess up too many times, you get out of that circle of trust. So
Yep.
I have all the confidence in the world in this kid. I think he's gonna be a baller. I don't think he'll be in the exact circle right away. Most receivers aren't. But again, he was on the squad last year, right? So he's been there. Hasn't had a ton of playing time yet. So I will say by the OU game, he should be in that circle. And we'll quite frankly we'll need him to. We're gonna need a third guy.
This just shows how well Texas has been recruiting not only the blue chip guys, but the other guys as well. Parker Livingstone was a 3-star coming out of high school. He was one of the lower players in our recruiting class, just like
Should be a
Gunnar Helm.
4-star.
Right. Just like Gunnar Helm was, and Gunnar Helm's going to be a third, fourth round pick. This Livingstone kid comes in. He can run the route tree because that's very important to start. He'll stop practice and show a wide receiver how to get the correct depth and how to run the correct route because that is make sure that you're in the circle of trust. So he's done really good with that. They said on the report that he's been making a lot of wow catches. He's been mossing people. And then when he doesn't moss people, he can make one-handed catches, back shoulder catches. He can make diving catches. They basically said, I don't know if this speaks about our DBs. Again, I don't want to, but they said he's been uncoverable so far this spring. Again, we've only had 1 week of spring practice, but he is going to be a major impact player. And the reason I think that is because our tight end position is a little bit, wonky right now. Jordan Washington, the projected starter, has been in and out of practice due to injury. And now so we're very young at tight end. So because we're going to be missing that tight end piece, we're going to need a third wide receiver to come in and make an impact. And he's still young. He's a redshirt freshman. There's going to be some growing pains with Parker Livingstone during the season. But overall, I believe when you need him, he will make the play. And then let's talk. I just wanted to cover the freshman wide receiver. So this gives specifically a player that Nick likes, JB French, a big opportunity to come in because he played the same position as Ryan Wingo. Out of the 3 freshmen, do you think he's going to benefit the most from Wingo being out the rest of the spring?
Out of any of the freshman wide receivers or just?
Yes. Out of any of the freshman wide receivers, yes.
I do think so. I mean, there's a ton of talented ones. And the thing is, like you said, we recruit at a high level. You have to make of your opportunity. And I think DeAndre Moore is an excellent example of that. We already knew Ryan Wingo was a stud. But DeAndre Moore really had to make it work. And, when he did, he delivered. And he made big play after big play after big play. I think the guy, and I do think it's French, but I think the guy that takes the most of their opportunity, doesn't drop, even little things like being late to practice or running the wrong route. Now, you do that once, okay, but you do that 5 or 6 times, that becomes a habit, right? And, that's going to be something for Arch too. Like, hey, French, you need to make sure that you're lined up this way. That's going to be something that he's going to have to learn, even though he's been at the school for a little while. This will be his team now. It's Arch's team now. But who's going to make the most of those opportunities? I got French as the freshman guy, but there's probably a guy in the weeds we have no idea about who is just probably dominating as well. And that goes to recruiting. We probably won't even see him this year, right? Kind of like Parker Livingston. We didn't really see him this past season at all. So the guys lying in the weeds, that's the way it should be. For your running back, really for your whole team. Like, we got our stars, and then we're going to build them up in practice that you don't even know about them. And then when they're sophomores and juniors, they're going to ball out and pop up and be stars. And then we just keep doing that over and over again. But I do think it ended up being French, but there's a ton of talent on this squad.
Talking about your point about the guy in the weeds, they said Parker Livingston was that guy last year. Nick,
Right. That's what I'm saying.
he was very close to playing. If we had another, we already had Bond go down, right? But
That's what I'm
if we
saying.
had if we had another wide receiver injury, they said he was going to be thrusted in to the
Right.
Ohio State game as a true freshman. So it is going to be Jamie French because he can play the slot where DeAndre Moore plays. He can play outside like Parker Livingstone. They said that he's come with a very professional approach. He's really studying the playbook really hard. He's being very engaged and taking notes in meetings, spending a lot of time with the wide receivers coach, a lot of time with Arch Manning, and he's making the plays. And he was the most polished wide receiver out of all the freshmen coming out of this year's class. So that's why I think JB French is going to make an impact. How much we have to see, but he has the biggest to gain with Wingo's spring injury. Well, thank you so much for watching this episode of Touchdown Texas. We did talk a little bit more about basketball, but again, it was very exciting with the women's team making it to the Final Four, the men's team making the head coaching hire. But this is your place to be. We talk about every angle of the Texas Longhorns football team. But until then, we'll see y'all next time, man.